I was going to have to make a name for myself again.
Being reunited with Tom Landry, owner and GM of the San Antonio Riders, was purely coincidental. But it secured Chris's ties to the Cowboys he had been talking about since he was 10 years old.
Kentucky Cowboy. I really liked this documentary a lot. I don't really watch football ever, so I didn't know anything about this person. And the through line of the mental health kept me intrigued throughout the whole documentary. I never got bored. There wasn't a moment where I wondered what it was about. It was very clear from the beginning. I love the backstory from the beginning with all the different pictures, the videos, the news clips, just all of it was really well put together, well organized, scripted, all of it. I took so much from this, but the message at the end, it was just don't give up. And just think it's a wonderful message. And, the reason that it hits so hard is because this is a man talking from experience and sharing all the details of what he was going through, and that he didn't quit and he did keep going, and all the people in his life who were contributing to his growth and he didn't even know it, is very well relayed here, because I think we all can look back and see, the people in our lives that have really helped, even when we thought or weren't sure what their motive was. And I love when he said, you have to believe that they're real, because if you don't believe it, it doesn't matter. And not until I started blaming myself did I fight to get back. I mean, just so powerful. Again, just such a beautiful message. And I love that he is now wanting to help people with mental health struggles. Honestly, I don't know anyone that doesn't face demons. I don't know anyone that doesn't have, inner demons, not face them, but I think we all have them to a degree. I'm not downplaying that some people, are diagnosed with anxiety and depression and things of that level. But I do think that this message is good for everybody, and I really appreciate it. I love how he talks about standing up for himself as well. So really, really nicely done. I think this will do really well, and I hope it does, because I want it to be seen by a big audience, a huge audience. Great job and good luck.
This was undoubtedly a great documentary on an important figure for anyone who is into football. Not me specifically, but that said, I still found it rather interesting. Just the way everything was put together and edited, it was a good pace. It just kept you engaged and nodding along, and just made it interesting for someone who doesn't follow the sport. I was still engaged and overall enjoyed it.
The Kentucky Cowboy, I thought this was really, really interesting, and I think that there's such a value in especially athletes, and I'm happy to say that this has definitely changed over the course of my lifetime, where these types of conversations surrounding mental health in athletes is becoming more and more and more relevant and is becoming more acceptable and is becoming more normalized. And I think that that is such a wonderful thing, because like his whole story is the fact that he didn't feel like he could ask for help. He couldn't mention what he was going through internally to anybody throughout his whole young life and into the beginning of his professional career. And like I said, I think it's so great that these stories are coming out, and it's such a great example, especially by, I feel like, a male athlete, especially in something like American football that has lots and lots of stereotypes kind of surrounding it, and lots of, I'm sure, stigma around mental health and asking for help and admitting to any of these kinds of struggles or showing like weaknesses and things like that. So I think that these stories are so valuable and so important. And it was really interesting also just to see his struggle and how, he seemingly had everything that he could have wanted, but could not, he was not in the right mental space to be able to appreciate it or continue with it. And that even after all of that, he didn't give up on his dream. He struggled, he fought through his kind of inner demons. And when he felt strong enough, I guess, or, he had, conquered the majority of those, anxieties and, the panic and the feelings I'm sure that he had surrounding how much his, dad and his coach had been involved and things like that, that after he had kind of fought his way through all of that, he figured out some kind of plan to get back to doing what he loved. He didn't just completely move on because he accepted that like part of his life was over. He fought through what he wanted to fight through and wasn't ready to close the chapter. And so he did what he needed to do. He tried. He gave it his all. And I think that that's such a great lesson because, with something like mental health and with anxiety and with panic and with depression, you can go through bouts that feel like the world is ending and that have lost something, that you have lost your chance, you have lost your step, you've lost, and that you have to just completely pivot and move on. But that's not necessarily true. You can, struggle and overcome, and you can get back to doing what you really wanted to be doing. You don't have to give up if you're not ready to give up. And if you are ready to move on to a different part of your life, that's absolutely something you can do, but you're not forced into doing that, which I thought was such a great message to include as well.
The Kentucky Cowboy, oftentimes we view ourselves going in a certain direction, and sometimes our life path leads us in a direction thinking that maybe this is it, and this is the direction of where our life is going. And then something irrevocably changes and alters the path as we know it. And that's exactly what happens to this person. This is a documentary of someone from my old Kentucky home. And it is the story of a rise and fall, but also a fall into something bigger and appreciative and more grateful. As someone who was fallen into this world of, will I make it to professional football? Okay, I've achieved professional football. And like having this inertia to not give up and to continue growing and to continue being competitive. And, the work never stops, right? Until you have an injury that forces you to take a breath. And it's so finicky in the sports world. You could lose your job in a moment's notice. This was a tear of tendons from, two men trying to defend the ball. And so that loss, that grief of what could have been, and being able to find what may be outside of this world that you have spent so much of your time building and being immersed in. What does that look like when it comes to anxiety or depression or these suicide ideations that people often face? When it comes to these instances of living your life as you know it until something happens and it alters the way that you live. And it may even be very so much connected to the thing that brings you passion, the thing that gives you life. I think about it all the time. If I weren't able to be a creative, that creativity would spill elsewhere. And that creative will turn into anxiety, overthinking. It will transition into my body in a different way. And so that passion and that overthinking, I think it's just shown us this nice adventure of this individual who has taken the time to rise and fall and rise back up again. And so that's sort of the story that we get to see here, of having this story of, we expect things to go a certain way, and sometimes we find something bigger because of what we think we might have missed. I think it's a beautiful story to tell.